The desert wind kicked red dust into the air as the road to Dry Hollow came into sight. Morning felt heavy like metal. Even before the sun climbed up, blood had already pooled under the wooden post in the center square. A girl hung there upside down, wrists tied behind her, her blood pattering into the dirt. An old board swung above her, letters scratched across it, which stole medicine. People passed by without a word, like this was normal life. Only one person paused. Harlon Creed, rancher loner, the man from Coyote Valley, pulled his hat down and studied the body rocking in the wind. Her skin was deep brown, a dark bruise blooming on one cheek. Her eyes were half open. They didn't plead. They didn't fear. They pushed back. Harlon said nothing. He turned and walked into the general store for salt, a knife, and lamp oil. "Stay out of that mess, Creed," the shopkeeper growled. Harlon nodded, paid, and headed for his black horse waiting outside. As he passed the girl, their eyes met for a second, like a memory waking up. The same kind of eyes that had kept him staring at the ceiling for years. He quickened his step, but unease tugged at him. That night his campfire sank low. Sleep would not come. He kept hearing the rough scrape of rope on skin. Near dawn he stood, tied a length of rope to his saddle horn, and tucked his knife at his belt. The sun had not touched the crooked roofs of Dry Hollow when Harlon came back. No one noticed him circle behind the square along a thin path from the scraggly, grazing field. The town was not calm. It was the kind of silence that prowls, waiting to bite. The girl still hung upside down. Her breath was shallow. Her lips were cracked. Her hair clumped with dust and blood. The sign creaked. The red letters had smeared, but the message still stabbed. Punishment. Harlon slid from his horse, steps quiet as shadow. The knife rode on his hip. He scanned the edge of town. No voices, no boots, no doors opening. In a jump he crossed to the post. His blade kissed the rope. The cut whispered like a falling leaf, but to Harlon it thundered. The girl fell into his arms, light as cloth yet heavy with a choice he couldn't undo. Her breath flickered like a dying spark. Her eyes cracked open and found him again. Still no begging. Still that hard will. A dog barked behind the blacksmith shop, sharp and sudden. Harlon didn't wait. He swung her across Midnight's back and tore out through the grass, vanishing into a tangle of cactus like a gust of wind. No riders chased, yet. By the time they reached Coyote Valley, the sun was pouring fire over dry fields. Harlon laid the girl on a blanket in his old cabin, lit the stove, boiled water, washed the dried blood, and cleaned her cuts. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why. He only knew he couldn't look away this time. Outside, the wind changed. It carried the kind of edge that warns of footsteps coming. Night arrived early on the high flats. Wind howled through cracks in the rock, smelling of burnt grass and old ash. Harlon sat on the porch with his gun across his thigh, staring at the dark line of land. Inside, the girl burned with fever. Each thin breath hit his chest like a punch because it brought back another fever, long ago. He had boiled water then too. He had fanned a small flame. His little girl hadn't made it. Firelight played over the girl's face, steady and stubborn even in sleep. Rope marks ringed her wrists. Her swollen legs told how long she'd hung. He asked nothing. He poured more water into a tin cup and set it by hand, then stepped outside again. He could not sit and listen to that fragile breathing a minute longer. A few miles away, where the wind doubled back on itself, 3 riders moved under a pale moon. They didn't sing or talk. They kept the silent rhythm of men who hunt people. One spat into the dust. That Creed bastard's hiding the girl. Bet on it. In the cabin, the girl's eyes opened. Her sight was cloudy, but something inside her already knew where she was. Not the square, not the end. She was hot with fever, but her mind had come home. The walls were old boards. A rusty nail held a rifle. On the porch, Harlon sat like carved rock, rolling the knife's edge against his thumb. Not to use it. To keep from drifting into old thoughts. "You made it," he muttered, not sure if he meant her or himself. "No one's dying." A dry whisper rode the wind, branches or hooves, he couldn't tell. His hand was on the gun before he decided to move. Not from fear. From understanding that quiet is a pond's top, and trouble lives in the deep water. If you like this tale, comment number 1. Let's keep going. He woke her with a small pop of burning wood. Dawn hadn't broken, but the flames put a soft glow on her brow. The fever had snapped. Her breathing was even. Her eyes opened slowly and curious. "My name's Harlon," he said. "This is Red Mesa. Nothing here but rock, dust, and forgetting." She wet her lips and nodded. "Arya." The name drifted into the room like cool air. Harlan nodded back. A name was enough for now. He handed her warm water with wild mint leaves. She sipped in small pulls, eyes fixed on his hands, scarred knuckles, burn marks, old bullet lines, hands carved by hard years. She ate a thin porridge while he stepped behind the cabin, opened an old chest, and took out a map and a cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside lay a faded cavalry emblem, a torn scrap with the name of a dead town, El Swen, and a small pouch with a silver necklace. He looked at them like a man standing at a grave. "They will come," Arya said. Her voice was soft as mist. "They don't let anyone go." He didn't ask who. Her tone carried the weight. Not just men, but memory, doom with spurs. "Then we don't run," Harlan said. "We make em remember this place." Arya met his eyes, and for the first time a spark showed there. By noon, they moved west of Red Mesa to a narrow pass cut by high cliffs. "One way in, one way out," Harlan said. "If we hold a day, that's enough." They stacked stones. They tied wire. They scattered cactus thorns and set broken mirror shards to catch sun. Arya's hands trembled as she knotted trap cords, but she kept steady. She had lived through worse. Now she was learning to fight back. As evening slid down the rock, they sat on the cliff edge with a strip of dried meat. They didn't speak. Between them something started, not trust, but need. Wind ran through the gorge again. In the distance, hoofbeats answered. Arya closed her eyes. Harlan gripped his knife. "Tonight the stones remember blood," he said. "And dawn won't wait for the slow." Dark fell, and Red Mesa went still. Neither of them slept. They took positions on opposite sides of the pass, eyes fixed on the mouth where hunters would appear. The high plains grow cold at night. Wind from the canyon carried old smells, blood and smoke. Arya held a sharpened stake carved from a broken broom handle. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Sure," Harlan said, voice flat as the desert floor. "But fear saves no one. It just slows your hands." Hoofbeats came again, faint then clear. "3 horses," hissed a man's voice. "I see smoke," Harlan whispered back. They ducked behind rock. The wind died. The world held its breath. Footsteps scraped, careful, cautious. The first rider stepped into the pass. His boots snagged a wire. Stones crashed from above. He screamed. The other 2 drew guns just as Harlan fired. The canyon snapped with shots. Sparks blinked and died. One man dropped. The last tried to run, but Arya was already there, flashing a mirror shard into his eyes. He stumbled. Harlan slipped behind and smashed him down with a rifle, but when the sound drained out of the pass, Harlan turned to Arya. Blood streaked her cheek. Her hands shook, but her eyes stayed clear. "Did you kill?" he asked. "No." "Guji." "No need to yet." They buried the dead at the cliff wall. The other 2 they tied and left at the pass. With charcoal, Harlan scrawled, "On the rock, if you want to live, do not come for me." Arya read the words, then looked up. "They'll still come. I'll still be waiting," he said. The sun climbed slow over Red Mesa and laid pale gold across cracked ledges. Arya sat on the porch with a damp cloth, wiping her blade clean. Harlan studied the tracks in the dust, marks that told a clean story of the hunt. "They'll return with more," Arya said, tired but steady. Harlan lifted his chin toward the south, where the wide, dry valley waited. "We could pull them that way. Narrow slot, easy to trap." Arya shook her head. "You want to keep killing?" Harlan held her gaze. His eyes didn't talk about killing. They spoke of something else. No more hanging bodies. They walked all morning along a dead creek and past gray swipes of ash left by last year's fire. Black dust clung to their boots and clothes, the kind that does not wash off easily. In the valley's heart stood a half-burned wooden cross leaning in the earth. Arya stopped, fingers on the char they used to hang people here, she said. I know, Harlon answered. I saw it once and walked away. And now, she asked. Now I stand. They built a lookout from stone and dry wood. From there, they could watch every road into the basin. Arya sprinkled powdered roots and herbs on the path, signals only certain eyes would read. Harlon stacked firewood in the shape of a cross. If found, that fire would be the last warning. By late afternoon, wind rose hard, carrying hoofbeats. 5 this time. A man in a red scarf led them, one crooked eye, a bent nose. Behind him rode the 2 Harlon had knocked cold, now hunting again. They stopped 200 paces away. No talk, only hands tightening on pistols. Arya crouched behind a dirt ridge with her knife. She breathed slowly. Harlon did not hide. He walked forward like a man with nothing left to lose. I let you live, he called. And still you ride here to die. The red-scarfed man sneered. We came for the little savage's head. Arya stepped into view. Come try. For a heartbeat, wind tangled her hair and old ash rose like ghosts. The first shot came, not from the riders, but from the hunted. Ash clouded the air. The canyon rang with gunfire. 3 horses went down the trail, blood soaking into sand. Arya stood firm, face steady. Her blade was stained, but her grip did not shake. 2 ran, she said, breathing hard. Do we chase? Harlon shook his head. They'll carry the message. Let the rest hear. He stepped over the red scarf body and plucked a warm bullet from a Colt. They won't forget this place. Good, Arya said. They pulled the bodies together, not to bury, but to cover with old cloth. Enough to fight off scavengers, not enough to hide what happened. That too was a choice. That too was a message. Evening slid over Red Mesa like a red veil. Sunlight crawled across the stone, slow as spilled blood. Harlon struck a fire for the first time in days. Arya crushed dry herbs, mixing them with ash and water. Neither spoke. There was nothing to complain about and nothing to explain. Have you ever been killed for something like this? Arya asked at last, eyes on the flame. For what? Harlon said, for something not yours, for someone who isn't your kin. Wind hissed through the canyon. Harlon didn't answer. He let the silence sit. Arya didn't push. She wrapped the paste and set it beside him. Their hands brushed for a heartbeat, not a tender thing. Just 2 people who had walked through danger side by side. They didn't sleep. Far off, a branch snapped. A horse's shape flickered across the ridge and disappeared. Harlon lay still, fingers around the rifle. Arya's breathing stayed steady, but light. She was awake too. Before sunrise, they left the post. Harlon rolled the hand-drawn map tight and slid it inside his coat. Arya slung a pouch of herbs and a carved piece of wood with simple words cut into it. This is the land of the ones who survived. They jammed that sign in the center of the pass where any rider would see it, then slipped west into a tangle of dead cypress. Arya glanced back once. They'll return, she said, and find a place that isn't scared anymore. They will, Harlon said. The first blade of daylight cut through the branches. Under the wooden sign, the ash still danced, but it wasn't the dust of death now. It felt like proof that someone had stood and fought. Rain came, without warning, the season's first. They ducked under a low rock shelf, while water tapped their shoulders and ran down their sleeves. Arya tilted her head to listen. The sound was old and kind, like a heartbeat found after a long search. How long? She asked. Since you last saw rain? Harlon let out a rough laugh. Last time I was still wearing a badge. Arya didn't ask more. Some stories are for the air and the earth, not for words. She pulled off her boots and set bare feet on the wet ground. A real mumin, a living one. The wind carried a cool scent of wild mint from the canyon. Tomorrow we hit the crossroads, Harlon said. We'll have to pick away. East is flat, easy walking, easy to spot. West is broken rock, hard going, but no one follows. We go west, Arya answered without a pause. Harlon nodded. You're not afraid of being alone. Solitude never killed me, she said. Lies did. They let the quiet fill in around them while the rain softened. Then Arya slid her boots back on. Harlon wiped water from a rifle. They stood, shouldered their gear, and moved. Their steps pressed deep on the damp path. Behind them, only insects spoke. Ahead, sharp cliffs waited. That night they camped in a mountain hollow big enough for 2 bodies and a small fire. The wind wasn't strong, but the cold rose straight from rock to bone. Arya shaved thin slices from a piece of ginger with a dull blade. Her hands trembled a little. Harlon watched the flames, eyes searching as if the fire might show him a face he'd lost. I was hit here once, he said, touching his side. Bullet missed the killing place, but the mark stayed. Why keep it? Arya asked. You should have forgotten. Harlon gave a humorless half-smile. Forgetting is easy. Remembering takes work. Scars are proof you made it. Ash drifted. Quiet fell again. Arya handed him the ginger. He poured hot water into a rusted tin cup. When I was a child, she said, I had scars too. Not from bullets. Harlon didn't ask. He passed the cup back. The ginger steam rose, hot, sharp, and strong. A distant wolf called. Harlon's hand tightened on the rifle. Tomorrow we reach Bluestone Pass, he said. Someone will be there. Who? An old face. He sold me out once. Says he wants to make it right. I don't trust traitors, Arya said. Neither do I, Harlon answered. But sometimes one betrayal turns into a lifetime of loyalty. The fire shrank. Darkness took the edges of the hollow. Bluestone Pass looked like a crack in the world, deep, cold, and silent. Harlon led, rifle sling biting his shoulder. Arya followed, eyes steady on the moving shadows along the stone. A thin man waited in the center of the cut, gray beard, hat low, saddle worn to the bone. His horse shook its head against the wind. He looked up when he saw them and did not reach for steel. Cassidy, Harlon said. It wasn't a greeting. It was a verdict. Cassidy dipped his chin. I won't ask for pardon. Just a chance to make it right. Arya's fingers tightened on the knife at her side. Why should we trust you? He looked at her and spoke plainly. Because once I helped hang someone like you. I haven't slept straight since. Wind clawed at the cliffs. For a moment, no one said a word. Talk, Harlon said. Where are they? Cassidy pointed south. Old outpost. 3 men. One of them is Glenth, the one who burned the Apache village that year. Arya went still. That name was more than a man. It was a night. A scream, a village on fire. I'm coming with you, Cassidy added. I'll finish what I started. Harlon studied him for a long time. Then he nodded once. They built another fire that night. The 3 of them stared into it like it could tell them what the sun would bring. Arya looked up at the sky. The stars were scattered, like scars that never fade. Harlon sharpened his knife. Cassidy slept with his old rifle hugged close, like a man holding his past. Before sleep came, Arya spoke low, not sure if she was speaking to Harlon, the fire, or the black above them. If we die tomorrow, at least it'll be for something that matters. Harlon didn't answer. He reached into his coat and drew out a thin leather cord. A silver ring hung at the end of it. He set it on the ground between them. It belonged to the last one I couldn't save, he said. Arya didn't ask who. She nodded once. The wind eased. In that small circle of light, the 3 of them were no longer just 3 people. They were a shape made of loss, of wanting to fix what broke, and of stubborn will. Dawn scraped pale over the rocks. They moved south through brush and brittle grass, keeping low. The old outpost sat on a rise, a rectangle of weathered boards, a leaning water trough, and a fence that had given up. Smoke bled thin from a stovepipe. 3 inside. Harlon whispered. Cassidy nodded. Stables on the right. Back door facing the arroyo. Arya touched the pouch at her hip and felt the carved wood there. This is the land of the ones who survived. The words steadied her hand. Glenth is mine, she said. Harlan's jaw worked, but he didn't argue. "We do it clean." They split, Harlon angling wide toward the dry wash, Arya low against the fence line, Cassidy sliding past the broken water trough. A cloud crawled over the sun, and the yard fell dim. A door creaked. A man stepped out to spit. Crooked eye. Bent nose. Not Glenth. Arya held still, measuring the space from her cover to his throat. The man turned, heard something, maybe a boot scrape, maybe the memory of one, and swung his head toward the trough. Cassidy was already there, gun leveled, voice flat. "Easy." A second man pushed through the doorway, gun first. Harlan's shot cracked once. Wood splintered. The second man dropped without a sound. The third came fast, a thick shadow through the smoke, boots pounding the stoop. He broke, left toward the stable. Arya rose and moved. Her knife flashed, not to kill, but to turn him back into open ground. He staggered, and saw Harlon waiting with the Colt. He stopped cold. Then he smiled a slow, ugly smile. "Glenth," Arya said. "Little ghost," he answered. "I remember the village." Harlan's finger tightened. Arya lifted a palm, stopping him. Her voice was steady. "You remember the children?" Glentha's smile twitched. "They were nothing, but—" He didn't finish. Cassidy's rifle spoke from the trough, a single hard sound. Glenth went to his knees, eyes wide at the sky like it had betrayed him. Harlon stepped close and pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck. Nothing. He looked at Cassidy. The older man's hands were shaking. "Thought that was my sin to burn away," Cassidy muttered. "You did what needed doing," Harlon said. They pulled the bodies into the shade. No words written on rock this time. No message but the empty yard and still air. Arya stood with her knife down and her shoulders tight. When she finally looked up, there was something new in her face. Not joy, not peace, but a door closing. "Is it over?" Cassidy asked. "No," Harlon said. "Things like this echo." "Then we keep moving," Arya added. They took the long way out, cutting west where the ground broke into ribs of stone. By noon, heat rose in waves. The sky was a hard blue bowl. Harlon passed Arya the canteen. She drank and handed it back without touching his fingers. "Where to now?" Cassidy asked. "Back to the sign," Harlon said. "Back to the past. We don't run. We hold." They walked in a quiet line. Behind them, the old outpost sagged into the heat as if it had always been empty. Ahead lay the maze of rock and dust and the narrow mouth of Bluestone Pass. One way in, one way out, and the promise they had carved there. This is the land of the ones who survived. They reached Bluestone Pass near dusk. Wind scraped along the walls like a dull knife. The wooden sign still stood in the narrow mouth, and ash still swirled beneath it, no longer the dust of dying, but a mark that someone had stood here and said enough. Harlon scanned the ridgelines. Arya crouched to read the ground. Cassidy watched the open sky the way guilty men watch doors. "Tracks?" Harlon asked. 2 riders came close, Arya said. "Didn't enter." They turned east. "They read the sign," Cassidy muttered. "Or they remember the canyon," Harlon answered. "Either way, they're telling the others." They set a low fire behind a rock lip to hide the glow. Harlon checked the wire lines and reset the mirror shards to catch morning light. Arya ground dry leaves, mixed them with a pinch of ash, and packed the paste tight in a wrap. Cassidy cleaned his rifle and did not look at his hands, which shook now and then like old branches in a light wind. "You did what was needed," Harlon said without looking up. "I know," Cassidy said. "Doesn't make it light." Silence settled. Coyotes called far off, thin and high. Before midnight, clouds moved in. The pass went black. Harlon sat with his back to the stone, listening past the wind, past the hush that rides in front of trouble. Arya slept in short breaths, then opened her eyes and stared at the dark as if she could hear the shape of any man moving through it. Cassidy kept turning the silver ring on its leather cord where Harlon had laid it between them. Finally he set it down and folded his hands. Near dawn, the wind shifted. The world smelled of iron and dust. Arya nudged Harlon and pointed. A faint click, hoof on stone. Another. Then nothing. "4," she whispered. Maybe 5. Let them count the wire, Harlon said, voice low. Let them see the glass. A pale stripe of daylight slid into the pass. The riders held outside the mouth, just far enough that faces blurred. One called out, not a challenge, not a threat, just a question made of heat and distance. You Creed. Maybe, Harlon answered. We ain't here to die, the voice said. We came to look and leave. Then look, Harlon said, and leave. The riders edged closer until they could see the sign, the ash, the stacked stones, the careful wires strung along the ground. One leaned forward in the saddle, scowled, spit, and tugged his reins. The group turned. Hooves faded. The pass breathed again. They'll bring more, Cassidy said. Maybe, Harlon replied. Maybe they bring a memory instead. They let the day stretch thin. No footsteps came. No dust trails lifted on the horizon. By late morning, heat pooled against the rock walls. Harlon stood and poured canteen water into his hat for the horse. Arya rose and walked to the sign, laying a small twist of wild mint at its base. Cassidy lit a match, watched it burn down close to his fingers, then pinch it out. What now, he asked. Red Mesa, Harlon said. My cabin first. Supplies. Then we decide. They moved in the shadow where they could, crossing the hard flats with slow steps to save breath. At the old cabin, the door hung on one hinge. Inside, the place was as they had left it, stove cold. Tin cup on the table, the chest closed. Arya went to the shelf, found the folded cloth, and wrapped it around the mint paste and the few herbs left. Harlon checked the cartridges, counted them in his head, then counted again. Cassidy stood at the doorway, looking out into the bright day like he could see the years he had thrown away. Harlon took the ring from the leather cord and set it under a flat stone on the mantel. For the ones who come after us, he said. Anyone you expect to find it? Cassidy asked. No, Harlon answered. That's why it needs to be here. They ate dried meat and stale bread quietly. When they were done, Harlon wiped the knife and slid it home. Arya tied her hair back with a strip of cloth torn from the gray blanket. Cassidy found a length of rawhide and wrapped the cracked stock of his rifle, careful and slow. Dry hollow, Arya said finally. Harlon looked at her. You want to go back? Her eyes didn't waver. They hung me there. Others watched. I won't start a war. I will end a habit. Cassidy swallowed. It won't be clean. Nothing is, Arya said. They set out in the low light of late afternoon, when shadows are long enough to hide in. The road felt the same as the first day, dust rising in red sheets, the town square a dark patch ahead. But the air carried a different weight now, the kind that comes when news has already arrived before you do. Dry Hollow was quiet when they rode in. Not the predator quiet of that first morning, but the tired, kind towns where after a long, ugly story. The wooden post still stood in the square. The board that once read, which stole medicine, had been pulled down. Its nails stuck out like teeth. They stopped short of the well and dismounted. No one stepped out to meet them, but faces watched from shadow, behind shutters, through cracks in doors, from under hat brims on the hotel porch. Harlon walked to the post, laid a palm on it, then let his hand fall. Where's your law? Cassidy called. No answer. Then old Rusk, the blacksmith, pushed through his shop door, hammer still in his hand. He looked thin in the daylight, like a man who had set down his anger and found he had nothing else to hold. Law ain't come in months, Rusk said. We made our own. You made a hanging, Harlon said. Rusk's eyes slid to Arya, then back. I didn't pull that rope, he said, but I didn't cut it either. Arya stepped forward. Her voice was even. I came for what was taken. Not things. Not medicine. A promise. Which promise? Rusk asked. That we are not to be strung up because we are easy, Arya said. That you don't walk past blood and call it morning. A door creaked. The shopkeeper who had warned Harlon, stay out of that mess, Creed, stood on his threshold with his apron on and guilt written across his face. We were scared, he said. Harlon's jaw tightened. Scared of a girl? Scared of ourselves, the shopkeeper said. Scared of drought. Scared of sickness. Scared of soldiers not coming back and outlaws who do. We looked at her and saw a place to put fear. And you hung it there, Cassidy said, nodding at the post. But it's still inside you. A few more townsfolk edged into the open, slow, wary. A woman with flour on her hands. A boy with a dented tin cup. The preacher, coat dusty, collar undone. No one held a gun. No one raised a hand. "What do you want?" the preacher asked. "Simple," Harlon said. "You don't do it again." "And if riders come to take someone?" Rusk asked. "If men show with rope and the smell of whiskey and a story on their tongues?" Harlon shifted his weight. "Then you remember this pass," he said. "Remember Red Mesa. Remember that 3 stood and more than 3 rode away." Arya untied the carved wood from her pouch and handed it to the preacher. He read the words cut into it, slowly, like each line cost him something. "This is the land of the ones who survived." "You keep that," she said. "Put it where people see it every day." The preacher closed his fist around the wood. "What if someone comes to take it down?" "Then carve another," Arya said. A sound rolled down the road, the far-off beat of hooves. Heads turned. Harlon looked to Arya, then to Cassidy. "Out the back," Harlon said. "We're not here to start a show." They slipped through the alley, behind the feed store, and cut for the scrub. From the far edge of town, they watched a small patrol. Ride in 5 men under dust and sun, not hunters, not drunk, just the kind of men who come after rumors to see if they're true. The patrol circled the square, read the empty post, took water at the well, asked questions nobody answered, and finally rode on. Harlon let out the breath he'd been holding. That's enough for today. They took the long way back to the high country. No words until the land opened, and the pass showed again like a wound that had learned to scar. At the mouth of Blue Stone, they stopped. Wind traced the wire lines. Mirror chips winked. The sign stood steady. Cassidy turned to Harlon. "This where we part?" "For now," Harlon said. Cassidy's face folded into lines that looked almost like peace. "I'll head north," he said. "There's a ranch up there needs a man who can fix fence and keep his mouth shut." "You can carry news," Harlon said. "Not the bloody kind. The other kind." Cassidy nodded, swung into the saddle, and tipped his hat to Arya. "You got iron, girl." "I have will," she said. "Iron breaks. Will bends and holds." He smiled at that and rode away, small in the glare, until he wasn't a shape anymore. Harlon and Arya walked to the sign. The mint had dried. The ash had settled. Harlon picked up a flat stone and placed it on the base, just enough weight to hold in a hard wind. "Do we stay?" Arya asked. "For a time," Harlon said. "Long enough for the story to set." They made a camp above the pass, where a twisted cedar grew out of rock. That night, the stars felt closer. The air didn't taste like fear. Harlon laid the map across his knee and traced a finger along the dry creek that had carried them here, over the valley with a burned cross, past Red Mesa, into the maze that still waited. "You said once you wore a badge," Arya said. "I did," Harlon said. "I wore it when I walked away from a cross like that. I took it off the next day." "You kept the scar," she said. "I keep them all," he answered. She looked out over the black shape of the pass. "They'll test this place again." "Then we'll meet them again," he said. "Or someone will." They sat without talking for a long time. The wind slowed. The night turned soft. Before sleep, Harlon took the leather cord from his pocket. Another one, thinner, plain. He tied it around a small branch of the twisted cedar and left it there, a line of brown against dark bark. "For the ones we didn't save," he said. "For the ones we will," Arya added. Morning would come hard and bright. Riders might come, or not. Either way, the pass would stand. The sign would stand. And the story would stand. The one about a town that looked away, a man who didn't, a girl who would not bend, and a place that learned to say no more.